Hey everybody, today Rahdo runs through the games of 2010. Woohoo! 2010. Now, this is not going to be the the top selling games of 2010, or what was the most popular games of 2010, or even what is objectively the best games of 2010. This is going to be Jen's and my favorite games from the year 2010. So obviously take it all with a grain of salt, bearing in mind that Jen and I pretty much only play two-player games. We generally prefer more Euro-y type things. We prefer a little bit more strategy, etc., etc. But if you're watching my videos, you already know all this, and I don't need to do any preamble. Let's just start counting down with number 10. Merkator. Now, this might be a surprise for some folks. This is actually kind of the red-headed stepchild of Uwe Rosenberg's latest big, heavy, economic Euro-style games. This one doesn't really get anywhere near as much love as Agricola or Le Havre, or heck, even Gates at Loyang. And certainly people are a heck of a lot more excited about his games this year. The Glass Road and the Underground Agricola, Caverna, I think. Those are like everybody's excited about these big new Uwe Rosenberg games that are coming. But in 2010, a really kick-ass Uwe Rosenberg game came out, and it seems like very few people noticed, and the people who did pretty much dismissed it out of hand. And honestly, I'm at a loss, because Jen, I think, this is a fantastic game. This is one of, actually, we enjoy this more than, gasp, Le Havre. Yes, this is better than Le Havre, at least for us, at least for two-player. Now, why? Well, chances are you don't know anything about this one, and so let me just go ahead and open the box and show you. There's a few things that is really, really cool about this game. One is, actually, this is just strictly components. If you played Uwe Rosenberg games, you know they have a tendency to explode with chits and cubes and a bunch of stuff you have to keep track of. And this was the game that finally acknowledged that issue and did something about it, because the game comes with all these trays for all the different cubes that represent all the different resources. Just these little cardboard things you can put together. And here's a tray for stone, and and there's trays for gunpowder and all the various goods that are in the game, of which there are many. There are quite a few. How many games do you actually trade in fish oil and fabric and saltpeter and coal and iron and livestock and vegetables and citrus fruits? I mean, so there's tons and tons of cubes in this game, and it's so awesome that they come with these things, because when you put the board together, Le Havre style, it's several pieces, you put them next to each other, and it's got all these holes. So you slip these little things into the holes on the board, and then boom, you've got the countries that produce these various goods are right next to the goods themselves, and it's just a nice, easy way. It makes setup for this game super easy, because you just put all these things in their own separate bag. You pull them out, you throw them on the board, and you're good to go. More Uwe Rosenberg games could benefit from this system, so that's very, very cool. Just the physical design of these components is brilliant. Absolutely love it, because it addresses something that's very, very core about Uwe Rosenberg games. Now, but that's not about the gameplay. Now, the gameplay itself, it's a pretty straightforward, heavy economic simulation where we are European traders trying to basically get the right goods to the right place to score victory points, because we have certain contracts that want us to get certain goods to certain countries. Pretty straightforward stuff. What makes it interesting, though, is while you're doing all that, how you interact with other players and how you interact with the clock. The most important resource in this game is not fish oil or fabric or citrus fruits. It's time. Yeah, over the course of the game, you're earning more and more of these time tokens that represent how much time you can spend actually in transit, going from one country to another to make your deliveries. And so you spend time to move forward. And so it's a nice little thing. It's really, really great that time is just a raw resource that you can manipulate and you can hoard and all that stuff. But what really makes this game cool is if I've got a particular contract that says I got to take some wine from France to England, and it takes a certain amount of time to move from one space to another. Other players might be in the game right now, and they would also like to head to England, because they've got their own separate contract. They've got to deliver something to England. And what they can do is they can pay time to you. When I am trying to go over to England and somebody wants to tag along, they can give me some time tokens and basically get to move and complete their actions on my turn. So everybody wins. It's a win-win. Me, I'm getting time, so I have more time to do more stuff in the future. You, because you're actually getting to do your actions on my turn, which frees up your turn to do different things. And what this creates is a really interesting dynamic where you have to pay really close attention to the contracts that your opponents have, because then you can start to anticipate where they might be going in the future, and you can maneuver yourself to be in the right place at the right time to effectively, well, I'm not going to say get free motion because you have to still pay time to do it, but to basically be much more efficient in the way you move around. That's really the core of what makes Merkator a very, very cool game. The way that the players' fates are so closely intertwined, and if I'm smart and I know what you're planning to do, I can benefit from it. I mean, that's great. To us, that is a great example of player interaction that doesn't involve us shooting each other with guns, which is what most people tend to think of when they say, oh, this game isn't interactive enough. We need to have more ways to kill each other or hurt each other. In this game, interaction means more ways that we can work synergistically to achieve our own goals, and which is awesome. Some people complain about the lack of theme, that this is too dry, but I think they just fundamentally, I will, to be fair, this game is very thematically driven. It's basically set in the years during the 30-year war throughout Europe. From 1618 to 1648. And so, there's a lot of stuff in here. There's a lot of contracts about moving weapons and things like that. And the interesting thing is, if you could just treat them as cubes and not pay attention to what they are. But if you actually pay attention to what you're delivering and where you're delivering it to, based on the time frame, makes thematic sense. And also, people complain a lot about the fact that when I move, when I successfully deliver something to France, let's say, from wherever I went, however much time it spent, whether I was going with somebody else or whatever, I deliver something to France. That means what happens is France goes through like an economic boom because they've gotten what they needed, whatever the contract was. And it affects them, and it also affects the surrounding countries around France. So more cubes start coming onto the board. And a lot of people say, well, that's just really dumb. That makes no sense. When of course it makes perfect sense, because if France is financially and economically successful, that will bleed over to their partners, to their neighbors. If somebody's successful, their neighbors are going to be successful too. So everything, I think, makes thematic sense. And the only reason people don't realize that is because I think the rules do a very bad job of explaining just how thematically grounded this game is. They don't talk about the thematic reasoning behind anything. It's a real shame you have to read between the lines to understand that no, these things do make sense. This is just a dry, boring manual that makes it sound like a series of rules you have to follow, when in fact, if this had been written a little bit differently, it could have told a story about how your actions really make sense. So anyway, I think that's one of the reasons the game gets kind of harshly beat up on, because it's too dry and themeless, when in fact, well, ultimately, that's the fault of whoever wrote the manual. They could have done, and I see this actually in a lot of manuals where, like Great Zimbabwe is another great example. Fantastic, heavy, thematic Euro game that people say, well, these rules make no sense. Of course they make sense if you think about the theme, but the rules don't explain the theme. They just explain the rules. Always a mistake. A mistake that Merkator made, which I think hurts it, but it doesn't change the fact that this is our number 10 favorite game from the year 2010, Merkator. Okay, moving on. I've just made a big old mess over there. I will have to clean all of that up later, but let's move on now to number 9. Our number 9 topic shouldn't be a surprise to fans who watch me, because everybody knows how much of a fan I am of Stefan Feld. And 2010, his game of the year was Luna, which is a fantastic Stefan Feld game. Now, I've already done a run-through for this. In fact, I've done a run-through for all but 2 of these games. I haven't done a run-through for Merkator. I really should someday, because this game deserves some love and attention. It's a fantastic game. But anyway, I have done a run-through for Luna, so you can watch that and learn a little bit more about the game. But what is it? Basically, it's really this kind of weird, hippie, new age, crystals enchanting religion game where there's this cult on an island, kind of like this Celtic cult, I guess, I don't really know. And the current head priestess is setting down, and everybody's faction wants to put forward the new priestess. So we have to run around all these islands, and it's one of the cool things about this game is that the board itself is this one big central island with a library that we're doing an area control game on, trying to ensure we have the most of our followers in here, so we earn a lot of points. But then there's all these islands, these small satellite islands around it. Each island has its own separate unique ability it can give to you if you control the island. And so you're constantly moving your workers around from island to island, trying to, get the powers you need to get the most points. And while that's happening, the Moon Priestess herself is moving around. And so if you can anticipate where she's going to be and move your workers to be on the island that she will eventually land on when she moves 1, 2, 3, and she's going to land over here, that's going to happen at the end of a round. And so you are trying to, not do what you need to do, but also get the majority of workers over here so that you can be recognized and get more points than everybody else. While there's also this evil guy, this apostate, who's kind of like a non-believer trying to spread, generally I think of it as atheism, around, and don't believe the Moon Priestess, don't believe all this stuff, and he's moving around and he will actually drag you down. And so players can move him around. There's a lot of interesting stuff that goes on. The game itself, it's pretty nice. It's really kind of fun to put together. It's basically one of these games where you have a bunch of pieces, puzzle pieces, that snap together. Oop, those pieces do not snap together. I'm not going to actually put it together, but it all snaps together to create this big central island, and then you randomize the little satellite islands all around. So every time you play, the position of islands relative to each other makes a big difference, because as you're moving guys from here to here, if this island, if this is a good island or a bad island, it can change things a lot. It's a very fun game. It's actually, I would say, one of Stefan Feld's most thematic games, and I can't argue that his games are relatively dry, but this one, all the mechanisms have a very clear, grounded basis in theme, because this is not you being some governor who's just like pulling the strings like Trajan or something like that. This is you actually moving guys around to be in the right place at the right time to get stuff done. Very clever game, a lot of fun. Number 9, Luna. Now on to number 8. I've also done a run through for this not too long ago. Martin Wallace's London. This is another great, this is a card game first and foremost, basically that chronicles the building of London after the Great Fire of 1666. Players are basically trying to draft cards and have the right cards in their hand at the right time to earn money that lets them, build more real estate, more regions that will give them more cards so that they can run them at the right time to earn more money, and and just create this like kind of economic loop, and try and come out ahead. The map itself is actually very cool. Even though it does show, and maybe to a certain extent, Jen and I like it because, we lived in England for a long time. I worked in London for a long time. So, but, it does represent the London, and at the beginning of the game, there's just this central bit, and you start spreading out, and over the course of the game, as you take over more and more of these districts, you get more victory points, you get more cards, and you basically just get more control. Now, that's pretty straightforward. That's the board game component, but really, at its heart, this is a card game. And what makes this game so interesting is it's kind of like Race for the Galaxy or San Juan, in that all of these cards have multiple uses. And so when you are sitting with a handful of cards in your hand and you're trying to figure out what you do, what you're going to do, you have to sacrifice things. If I want to build the Highgate Cemetery, which has the function of trying to get rid of poverty, basically, I have to sacrifice other cards. To play a pink card, I have to discard pink cards. So if I really want this out, because I've got a lot of poverty in my part of town, and so I need the Highgate Cemetery. It cost me £4 to build it, and it'll really help with. I might have to give up the bridge, which is a pink card, but I really want the bridge too, because it's going to give me $1 for every brown card in the display, and there's a lot right now, but I really need this, and tough choices. And the other really interesting thing about this is, as I do actually choose, I'll give up Lloyd's of London so that I can get the omnibus and play it to my section of town. What'll happen is, over the course of the game, you'll get a series of cards laid out in front of you that are primed and ready to go and do whatever their special action is, like get rid of poverty, or earn you money, or let you draw cards, or send your poverty to somebody else, or whatever it might be. Lots of really cool effects. And what you do is, you spend your whole turn, when you eventually decide to do it, to run your city, which means you activate all the cards you previously played. Most of the cards in the game have a one-time use, and once they are used, you flip them over, and then they just become a dead weight. Because what happens is, every time you run your city, you increase more poverty based on the number of cards you have in front of you. So if you're going to run your city, you better hope those cards do something, because after Lloyd's of London has done whatever it was going to do, take $2 from each player, no doubt, because when you activate it, and then you flip it, then it becomes a noose around your neck, because now it's already done its special power, and now for the rest of the game, all it's going to do is generate poverty. So you have to deal with that, and you deal with that by building over the top of it. And so there's a lot of really, really clever and interesting game or card play for this. Makes it feel very, very different. Now, the problem with this game is that as a two-player game, it has a couple of issues. There's a little bit of balance problems. It really excels with more players, with 3 or 4 players. But there is a very, very good variant that Jen and I play with, and if you go and watch my run-through, it's how I actually play it. I demonstrated the variant that pretty much smooths out all the issues of the two-player game and makes this absolutely fantastic. So if you've ever thought about London, you thought, oh, I hear it's not very balanced, it's got these balance problems, or it's not very good at 2. That's because people didn't know about the variant. If you play this with the variant, it's a fantastic game. It's Jensen, my number 8. You can watch the video and learn more. London. Okay, moving on to number 7. Now, interestingly, I've done a run through for this one as well. This is the second run through I ever did. So if talking about this convinces you to go look at the old run through for this, I would like to apologize. As my second one, I was still very much a novice. I didn't know what I was doing. I was filming with my iPhone, and it is an ugly video. But it does do a pretty good job of showing just how much fun this heavy, heavy economic worker placement game is set in the world of high fashion. Now, this game, I don't even know if it's worth breaking out. I mean, it has a very straightforward utilitarian board. Oh gosh, what to talk about? Well, okay, it's a straightforward worker placement game. You have a certain number of workers you can place every turn, and what you're trying to do is you have you're a budding fashion designer trying to get your fashion design company up and running. So at regular intervals, I think if I recall correctly, there are 4 big fashion shows that happen over the course of the game. And what you're trying to do in the rounds leading up to the big fashion show is put together the perfect ensemble of blouses and skirts and pantsuits and all kinds of different types of clothes. You could focus on like one particular style, like bohemian or casual or sporty. You can branch out. You can there's a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different combinations of fashions you can put together. And while you're doing that, while you're basically trying to put together the perfect ensemble of children's clothes, oh, look at this cute little girl in the cute little dress, blouses, and actually one of the nice things is you get to see girls in mannequins, because this is just about you have the matching skirt for that, so you can put on the perfect show. But while you're doing all that, you are also trying to run a business, keep your employees happy. You have to pay their salaries. You have to deal with what your opponent is doing, and it's a really actually a pretty straightforward game. It's not necessarily the most remarkable. It doesn't have anything that I would say is like this really bold, amazing new mechanism that kind of changes the way you feel about board games. But it is really solid, really tight, a lot of really tough decisions, and a great sense of escalation. At the beginning of the game, you are dirt poor, just barely scraping by with a couple of employees, but by the end of the game, you feel like you are running this epic huge agency, employing tons of people, hiring PR firms and, having all kinds of designers working for you and stuff like that. And so the sense of, by the end of the game, look at how far I've come. Look at what I have created. Look at this empire I have built. And then you go into the final show with your best display and you score tons and tons of points and are the toast of the fashion world. It's just really satisfying, really meaty. And it's interesting, I know this game doesn't get as much love as it should because of the theme, unfortunately. This game is hugely grounded in theme, and a lot of people just dismiss it out of hand because I don't want to play a game about fashion. And it's a shame. It's funny, I say that the game is very heavily grounded and influenced by theme because it really does feel like you're making business decisions that are applicable to the fashion industry. But that said, if you don't like fashion, you don't care about fashion, it will not affect your enjoyment of this game at all because the business decisions you're making are applicable to pretty much any business where there's a creative element. This game could have just as easily been about you running a fledgling video game development company, or a fledgling comic book company, or a fledgling web series studio, or any kind of creative endeavor. The stuff you do in this game is applicable. It just happens to have have then on top of it the theme. But video games have big shows like E3 or Gamescom and web series. So everything's applicable. And if you could just put aside the fact, okay, I get it. It's for girls, right? It's fashion. Put that aside. No, this is for board game geeks who are looking for a really strong, tight, economic worker placement game. It's a fantastic game, Jen. I love it. We don't play it near enough. I should get it out again. But anyway, this is our number 7. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yep, our number 7, Pret-a-Porter. Or Portier, I don't know how to pronounce it. Anyway, so now on to number 6. I've done a video for it too. Glen More from Matthias Kramer, who is fast becoming one of my favorite designers. He's really getting up there with Uwe Rosenberg and Stefan Feld. Actually, think about it, I should probably do a top 10 for designers. I really, really should. He would definitely make my top 10 designers easily. Maybe my top 5 at this point. And Glen More is one of the reasons why. Lancaster is amazing too, and Helvetia is great, and he's got some games coming out this year. But this is probably still our favorite one. It's a very simple tile land game. This is basically Agricola on steroids. It has Agricola-style tiles. Okay, well, let's see. Everybody knows, I'm sorry, did I say Agricola? I meant Carcassonne. Durr. Let's compare this to Carcassonne. Carcassonne is a common frame reference. And again, you can watch my video of this. There are a bunch of tiles. And basically, what you're doing every turn is, well, first of all, the tiles get laid out in a kind of this rondelle. That's, you actually can see it. There's all these tiles in this rondelle. And when it's my turn, say I'm the green player and it's my turn, I can choose, I can choose. I'm in last place. I'm in the end of the rondelle. Oh, no. Is that right? No. I think it's the yellow guy. The yellow guy is the last turn. So it's my turn. I want to do something. The first thing I do is I pick any of the tiles in front of me, and then I'll be able to build them to my own area, to my own parcel of land in Scotland. And so here's the interesting thing: the one if I want this one, because this is some lock that'll give me some special power, I could jump all the way ahead of everybody and grab it. And it'll be great, I'll put it out, it'll give me a lot of benefits, but then I've got to wait, because now I'm in front and I've got to wait. Every other player behind me in clockwise order will get to move. On the other hand, if I'm here and I just take this one, I think this is some sheep, I take this, I put it down, and I immediately get to go again. So the first half of the game is playing this rondelle right, grabbing the items you need at the right time, knowing when, oh God, that one way up there that's way ahead is so important, is so valuable, it'll be worth sacrificing a few turns so that I can grab it. As opposed to other times when, no, okay, even though I don't need sheep, I might as well grab it. Why wouldn't I grab it? Because I'll get to move again immediately. So that's the first half of the game. Very, very satisfying. Oh, and there's also a buy and sell market if you ever need more goods or sell goods to get money. But then the other thing, the thing that really makes it cool, once you're done playing with the rondelle, is you actually get this tile and you place it in the world. Because what happens is, say on one turn I'd placed a forest. I had a forest, or a Wald, because I got the German version. And forest generates wood, which is represented by green cubes. It's not brown cubes, which you expect, because the brown cubes are cattle. Anyway, so it generates wood. And at some point it might have generated some wood in the past. There might be some cubes on here representing the fact that I've got some wood I can use for building a pub or whatever it is I've recently picked up. But now, eventually, I will say I got that sheep I was talking about. And when I put this sheep down, wherever I put it in my tableau, when I put it down, it'll activate itself, it'll create a sheep cube, it'll get some sheep, and it'll activate whatever's next to it. So by putting the sheep next to the wood, I'll generate some more wood. And what happens is, over time, you end up, your board becomes this puzzle as you're trying to accomplish two things with every tile you lay down. You are trying to activate the surrounding tiles that will give you the most bang for your buck right then, that will give you what you need. If you're desperate for some money, or if you're desperate for selling a lot of goods for victory points, you want to actually put the new tile you've put next to that old one. But at the same time you're doing that, you're trying to get that immediate gratification of triggering a bunch of tiles, you're also trying to sculpt a landscape that will be thinking 2 or 3 or 4 turns into the future. Because what you can do is, there are restrictions. If the tile you get has a road, it has to connect to other roads. And then suddenly, half the places you'd want to put it, you can't put it. So you have to be looking in the future, okay, I'm going to get this tile on this turn, and I'm going to put it over here, and even though I could put it over here and it would activate a lot more stuff, I'm going to put it over here because then it's going to create a U-shaped wedge. And then when I put on my next turn a tile in between it, it'll trigger all of these tiles. So you get into these really interesting mind games trying to figure out the perfect way to spread out. And then the most brilliant element of this game is, I love the most, at the end, in final scoring, you get the standard scoring you would expect, for majorities, for various and sundry things. But one of the scoring mechanisms is whoever built their landscape with the fewest tiles gets bonus points. The game actively rewards you at the end of the game for being efficient, for being smarter than everybody else. Because it's one thing to say, every turn I just keep grabbing tons and tons of tiles, and it's not a particularly efficient place, but I've got so many tiles out there I can always activate and produce something. But if you're really smart with the way you build and you do more with less, the game will reward you, and that is so sweet. That just feels so good. You're scoring those extra points because you played so smart and you used 3 less tiles than anybody else. It's a little thing, but it's a big thing in Glen More. Okay, on to number 5. Yet another game, and here's a heavy box. Fresco. This is an awesome, I guess you could call it a worker placement game. And I would definitely consider this kind of a gateway game, in the same lines as, Stone Age maybe, or a Ticket to Ride, because this is a game that I think you could bring it on the table and anybody would, it would not turn anybody off. Everybody would say, oh, you're playing a board game where you're actually trying to paint the Sistine Chapel. You're master painters working with Leonardo da Vinci, painting this massive fresco. Sure. Oh, and you're mixing paints. You're taking different colored cubes and mixing them together to get special paints that will allow you to score more points. That sounds awesome. Mixing paints together, that's fun. A painting, it's a very creative game. But then, so it has an interesting theme, but then it gets really interesting because the first thing you do every round is you decide, as silly as it sounds, how early you're going to get out of bed. Because the earlier you get out of bed, that you get to the market, that's basically how turn order is determined. So the earlier you get up in the morning, if you're the earliest person, you're the earliest bird, you will get first dibs on everything. You'll get first dibs at the market to get all the latest paints. You'll get first dibs painting in the chapel or in the church to get all the really lucrative spots. You'll get first dibs to do portraits for nobles who want to give you more money for portraits. You'll get first dibs on everything. But there's a cost, because if you get up really early in the morning, you're grumpy. And actually, if you get grumpy too much, you start losing your ability. You can do less in the day. Whereas if you sleep in and you're really well rested, and maybe you spend some time going to the theater in the evening, you're in a really high spirits and you get to do more actions. I think that is just brilliant. I think one of the reasons this game is so great as a heavily thematic gateway is because everything makes sense. Everything is really grounded and people understand why. You're not just saying, hey, we're going to bid for turn order. At the beginning of the turn. You don't say that. No, we're going to decide who gets up early, and that's the person who gets to go to the markets first. So it's really, really great that way. And now, what's interesting is, after you've introduced this to people, and it starts with the base game, and it's a really simple game to play, I say, on the same level of complexity as a Stone Age. Then, a game comes with a bunch of additional modules you can turn on, and then suddenly, the game becomes much more deep and interesting and complex, because then, once you turn on the portraits, you're not just painting portraits of one guy to get money. Instead, certain contracts come up down here where specific people will have you paint specific portraits, which will give you new and interesting powers. And you want to be first to get those special ones. That means you have to get up earlier and you're more grumpy and you can't do as much stuff in the day. You add additional colors that will allow you to make additional mixes so you can get even more points. There's a lot that gets added to this game and it becomes very, very fun and satisfying. Jen and I love it a lot. Can't get enough of it. Everybody we've introduced this game to has taken to it. It just plays so nicely and easily and smoothly when you're playing the base family version. But Jen and I, we still love it because we can turn on and make it into a nice medium weight Euro. And then on top of that, the game's had a few expansions and promos that add even more complexity. This game can become super heavy. This game can become medium to heavy if you turn on a lot like the glaziers, where not only are you trying to paint, but you're also trying to make stained glass to fill in all the windows and whatnot. So it's really a lot of fun. You can play this with anybody. We're going to keep this one forever. I've done a run through for it. You can learn more. That was our number 5, Fresco. On to number 4. 4, 3, 2, 1. Yep. Key market. Wow, 2010 was definitely a year for heavy economic games. You know, we had Merkator, which is all about you know, European trade management. We had Luna, which is all about very heavy worker management, you know, politics type stuff. We had Pret, which was a very heavy business worker placement simulation. We had London, which was you know, I mean, and then we had, but then, and now we have this one, which is the heaviest of all of them. Now, I actually kind of feel bad even showing this to you. But you know what, heck, it is one of our favorites, so I have to. But here's the thing, it's going to be very hard for you to get this game if you're at all interested in it. Now, you can watch my run through to learn more about it, but in a nutshell, this is a very heavy game that is all about generating resources, you know, growing crops and you know, harvesting fish and livestock and stuff like that out on this kind of communal board where you're moving your workers around, trying to anticipate the needs of a season. Is next season going to be a boon year for fish? Then okay, you want to get the right guy to the right place, so you'll be able to get those fish when it's coming up. But when you actually gather all those fish, is fish going to be depressed on the market because you're buying and selling stuff on the market? So great, I got a lot of fish, but I can't sell them for bupkis because the market's really depressed. So I have to do something about that. I have to control this market while I'm also trying to, you know, play this really interesting logistical game of, you know, maneuvering my people and getting them into the right place. And then on top of it, there are all these guilds you can join. So do you take your workers out of the fields to actually get them into the guilds, so you'll end up with a whole bunch of additional special abilities as you work your way up to the higher level of the guilds. But then you have less workers in the fields. You know, and so there's like all these different things you're trying to pursue and trying to figure out. I mean, this game just really does our head in, but it's, you know, it's funny, for all the heaviness, the art itself is lovely and light. It's by Juliette Breeze, the wife of Richard Breeze, who is the, you know, the grand poobah of all key games, of all the Keydom games. Although this one was designed by, what's his name, Bleasdale, I think? Is that right? No, David Brain. Fantastic game, super heavy, super rich, plays fantastically with 2, and unfortunately, is fantastically expensive. So good luck on finding that if you're interested. But again, you can watch my video and learn more. Okay, down to number 3, yet another one. 2010, I've done a lot of 2010 videos. Dun, 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 number 3, Space Hulk Death Angel. Now, people might wonder, Space Hulk Death Angel? Really? A cooperative card game that just features lots of dice rolling as Space Marines fight aliens? Yeah. This is not normally the type of game that you would expect me and Jen to go gaga for, but this is easily one of my favorite games, period. And I'll be honest, this is a great game for solo play. I play this game solo quite a bit. I very rarely get to play it with anybody else because Jen has zero interest in being a machine gun toting space alien or space marine chasing down aliens. It's really sad because I know it's also a fantastic co-op game. It's so deep and meaty, but as even as a single player game, it's fantastic. Now what's going on? Well, like I said, it's a 100% card game, so it's very portable, very easy to take with you anywhere. Doesn't take up much table space, and oh gosh, unfortunately, the back of the box doesn't really show a very good picture of how this is set up. But basically, I have, you know, depending on how many players, you might have 2 or 3 or maybe just 1 squadron of Space Marines. And every Space Marine in your squadron has unique powers. You know, they have different ranges, they have different types of weapons they can attack. And what happens is, at the beginning of the game, all the Marines line up in a single file in a line, with half of them facing to the left and half of them facing to the right. You have to imagine that they're in a room, and in the room there's other cards that are put next to something. Again, if you picture this line of Space Marines all lined up in a row, it's called a formation, with a guy at the front of and a guy at the rear, and you know, they're all watching each other's backs. And then on to the left or right of them, depending on what room you're in, and you flip a card to see what room you're going to be in now, there might be, you know, dark corners or heating ducts or doors or whatever. And these become spawn locations for aliens. And the aliens, they just come at you hard. You know, dozens and dozens of them. You know, by the time the game is going full speed, you're surrounded by aliens on all sides. And the aliens, they have this very simple system where every turn you flip a card, and at the bottom of the card, not only does it tell you what the big event is, like, you know, one of my favorite events is somebody who had previously died, he's miraculously found. It turns out he didn't die, and he comes back and saves the day. But you know, there's really bad events like, just like terrible, terrible things, but sometimes really nice things happen. But in addition to the event, every one of the event cards, let's see if I can find one. Oh, oh, so many cards, so many cards. Oh, yeah, here we go. Every single event. Oh, wait, oh no, these are room cards. So this is a room card. You know, this might be, you might be in the core cognator where there's a special thing. There's a control panel in here, and if you can move your guys into the right position in the formation to be next to the control panel, they can push a button and, you know, sometimes do good things, you know, like fire up the engines and fry aliens. Sometimes, you know, do bad things like open airlocks and get themselves all sucked out into space and die. But gosh darn it, where are my event cards? There are so many cards. Okay, here we go, yeah. Like here, an event, you might be outnumbered on one turn. So, oh no, we have to discard all support tokens from each Space Marine that is engaged with a swarm of aliens. And after that happens, that's bad enough. But then 2 more groups of aliens will spawn. One on the yellow location and one on the red location. And that might be a door or whatever. So you can know that, hey, this guy is over here by the door. The door is very, very likely to get hit. So let's make sure the right guy is in that spot so that when the aliens do come, he'll be ready to, you know, open up with a flamethrower and torch them all. But then you never know exactly, because, you know, a card that actually activates the door, which is red, might not come up. One of the other ones might come up, and then suddenly, all the aliens, you know, appeared over here. And then after they're done, this symbol means all the aliens with this symbol, and, you know, there's different ones for, you know, that's the claw symbol, and here's like the tail symbol. The aliens themselves, they're all exactly the same. They just have these symbols, and these symbols mean that they move around. So you could do all this planning to say, okay, I've got the guy with the flamethrower over here, and he's going to cover that flank so that the other guy can turn his back so that he can activate the door, so he can, get us the heck out of this room. But then, surprise, we flip the event, and the aliens, they flip over to the other side, and now suddenly, my flamethrower guy, the aliens behind him, and he can't flame them anymore. And so there's so much drama. And then everything always comes down to this special die you roll for attacks. You never want to see these skulls, because that's, when you roll this die, because the game is harsh, it's brutal, it's unforgiving, you'll start this game with, you know, maybe 2, 4, 6, and, you know, you have a bunch of different Marines working for you. Guaranteed, half of them are going to die. You'll be lucky if you win. In fact, most of the time you'll almost make it, but then you'll die right at the final edge, because this game is harsh and brutal and unforgiving, and it's a constant war of attrition as your Marines get beaten down by the never-ending onslaught of aliens. It's so exciting, so dramatic. I have never not played this, and remember, this is me playing by myself, without, at some point in the game, some hugely critical, pivotal dice roll comes up, and, you know, it rolls my way against all odds, and I literally jump and scream. This game is that cool and that exciting. And then on top of it, when you're playing with other players and you're working out a strategy together and you're trying to figure, I mean, it's amazing. So much game in such a little box. I wish that it was not set in outer space with Marines fighting aliens. I wish it was a fantasy setting fighting orcs and goblins, because my wife would eat it up then. She would love it. And we would have so much fun playing together. But as it is, I'm a sad panda because I must play it alone. That was, I can't say our number 3 because it's really my number 3, but I am so passionate about this game. That's number 3, Death Angel. Okay, moving on to number 2. Now, this is the only other video in this top 10 that I have not done, or the only other game I have not done a video for. You might guess why when you see it. Nobody's been particularly interested. Nobody's particularly needed a video for Seven Wonders. Yes, that's right. This was by far the biggest hit game of the year, and really set the world on fire. Everybody has played this game. It is so excellent, so awesome, such a wonderful, wonderful card game. I don't really think I need to talk about it. I mean, I think everybody understands. At its heart, it's a card drafting game. Every turn, you've got a bunch of cards in your hand. You can only play one of them to build one of the wonders of the world, or to gather more resources for your civilization, or whatever it is you're trying to do. And you play that one, and you have to give all the other ones to the opponent to your left. And you don't want to give him any of those, because if you do, they will be able to do great things with them. So you're always torn. Do I play this because it's good for me, Or do I play this other thing, which isn't as good for me, but if I were to give it to my neighbor, it would be so good for them. It would be awful. And so it's very tense, very exciting. And one wonderful thing is, this game plays fantastically with 7. 7. It's a fast game, plays easily in under 45 minutes with 7 players. And that's because even though you're in a 7-player game, it can go up to 7, you're really only playing with the person to your right and your left. You really don't care what's going on. So it's brilliant and clever how that simple little, okay, I only care about you, and yet you can have this big game with a whole table full of people having a wonderful time. Now, it's interesting, when this game came out, I was at Essen. I saw a lot of people playing it. I thought, well, I should get this game. Oh, okay, I guess I'm not going to. It's a 3-player game. It's 3-7. And so I completely dismissed it out of hand because Jen and I were never going to get to play. It wasn't until months later that I found out that the game actually is a 2-7-player game, and they just don't say it on the box. They stupidly say 3-7. But the game does, in fact, come with a variant for 2 players. And what that does is it introduces, to have the 2-player game work the same way, because for the game to work, you really need to have somebody to your left and your right, because you're interacting with them. You're not just interacting with them in terms of handing cards to them or getting cards from them. You're also interacting with them because, hey, that guy over to my left, he's got a lot of rich forests. I'm going to pay him for some wood. That means I don't have to have forest because I can get all my lumber needs from him. And meanwhile, the guy to my right, he'll get all his stone from me. And there's always this synergy. So you need to have 3 players. And so how do you play it with 2? Well, what they do is they introduce a 3rd civilization that is a dummy player that players take turns controlling. And now, while a lot of people might think that's crap, it's not. It's awesome. I've played this game a lot. Because at not my last job, but my previous job to that, we played this at lunch every day for months. Every day. We played this so much, and I've played this tons with every player count. And honestly, my favorite player count is 2. Because having that dummy civilization gives you so much more richness and so much more control, because you get to control it every other turn. And so you basically have an ally that you can force it to build things that will benefit you. But then the next player, when they get control of it, they'll force it to, So it's a brilliant system. It works so nicely, and it's so simple and so smooth. Even though nobody's ever asked me to do a run through this, I wonder if I should, just to prove how good the 2-player version of this is, and why, in my opinion, anyway, it's actually better, because it gives you more to think about and more to play with. But anyway, that's 7 Wonders, our number 2. And our number 1. Let's just get right to it. Troyes, or Troyes if you prefer, but its official pronunciation is Troyes. Now, this is a very, very heavy dice game. That's what we love about it. This game, okay, well, there's so many things to talk about. Why this is our number 1. We love this game so much. In part because it's fun rolling dice. I mean, if you say you don't enjoy rolling dice, I'm going to call you a fibber. Everybody enjoys rolling dice. It's just a fun, pleasant, physical activity. And unlike so many dice games, which are just Yahtzee clones, this one builds a really rich, huge simulation of medieval city life around it. It's just absolutely amazing. Now, right off the bat, I will say some people are really turned off by the art, and I totally understand that. It's very authentic to the times. Jen, I think it's absolutely great. It's so well done, but I can understand why you wouldn't like it. So if you just dismiss it because of the art, say la vie, so be it. But the board itself features these 3 different districts of the city. And the districts have 3 colors. Yellow, which means the civilian stuff, the civilian government and, just like regular working Joes. Red, which is the royalty and military, and white, which is religion. And over the course of the game, there are a series of cards. Every game is different because there's different cards. And over the course of the game, these cards flip one at a time. So you can see this is halfway through the game when 2 of the 3 cards have been revealed in each of the 3 zones. And these are basically businesses and stores and churches and places where you can send your workers. You have these little workers to become apprentices. And basically what they all do is they give you different ways to earn money, to earn points, to manipulate the dice, and do all kinds of stuff. But the core of this game is, the first thing you do is every turn, depending on how many of your workers, your meeples, you have in the civilian, the royalty military, and the religion. You can see you got you put your meeples in here, and so this is like an area control thing. Depending on how many you have in there, you'll have that many yellow, red, or white dice. You roll all your dice up front, and those dice, and then you put them in your areas. So this player happened to have 3 yellow dice in a, which is a civilian and a religion dice. This player over here had yellow or red, or 2 yellows, or red and a white. So you roll them, everybody puts them out, and then over the course of a round, and this game is actually pretty short, it only plays a few rounds, you will use those dice to trigger certain actions, because these dice represent how much effort you, your royal family, can put into either military royalty actions, civilian actions, or religious actions. And which means how much can you pump up, how many times can you fire the apprentices or trigger the apprentices you put in these different places. So there's a lot of things going on. You're having to try and figure out what are the best business cards you can put your very limited supply of meeples into to apprentice them. And then how many of your meeples are you going to have in the different depots that determine how much action you can do in these three things. And then once you roll, how are you going to actually use those dice to trigger different things? Because the other interesting thing is too, it's not just your dice. These are my dice down here. I have access to my dice to trigger a lot of civil actions, but maybe this turn I had my one. I had a blue 6 there, and that's great. But I need more. I needed I needed 10 points total for what I was going to trigger up here. What I can do is I can buy dice from my opponent. I can see what they've got, and on my turn I could pay them some money, get their die, and then suddenly, oh, they thought they had that religion, but now I've got it. There's this huge amount of interaction where it can be pretty debilitating, but you know what? If I end up taking this person's religion, then they could buy it from somebody else. And so every turn, there's so much going on. You're always having to pay attention to all these different things. And meanwhile, while there's all the pressure inside the city to make the right choices to basically earn the most points in a dozen different ways, contributing to the building of a cathedral, and all kinds of different things, while you're doing all of that, you are also dealing with all these external pressures. Outside the city walls, there's brigands who are coming up, and everybody has to donate some of their dice to fight the brigands off. Again, the dice represents the amount of time you, as a royal personage here, is going to spend his personal resources or doing different things. And everybody has to donate to fighting these things. Plague comes along. Traveling salesmen come up. All kinds of crazy events come up. And everybody has to work collaboratively to deal with these. And if we don't deal with them, they start to build up over time, and they can destroy everything and everybody, and suddenly nobody gets to do anything. So it's such a delicate balancing act between all these different forces. Really gives you so much to grind on, when at its heart, it's a really fun, colorful dice chucking game. And that, I think, is why we love it so much, because at its heart, it's just this wonderful, visceral, oh, I got my dice, roll it, see what I got. But then, oh my gosh, now what am I going to do with these dice? Oh, and you rolled those, and you can see I rolled those. Are you going to take those? And all that stuff makes Trois our absolute favorite top game of 2010. Okay, folks, well, that was it. Hopefully you found some interesting stuff in this run-through. I'm crushing a box. Must stop the crushing. Hopefully you enjoyed this 2010 run-through. I'll be doing a 2011 sometime in the near future. Although I think I'm going to be trying to do a few more run-throughs. I was actually going to do a run-through today, but it turned out Jen had to go buy some chickens. We're getting chickens today. And I needed to play the game with her one more time before I was confident enough to do a run-through. So I figured, oh, she's off buying chickens right now. So what the heck? I figured I'll do another quick top 10 run-through of 2010. In the future, 2011, 2012, someday 2013, but I've got plans for other top 10s, top 10 dice games, top 10 co-op games, top 10 worker placement games, top 10 designers. I think that'd be a really cool one too. But anyway, if you have any suggestions, if you have any comments, if you want to tell me I'm crazy because, oh my God, how could you not mention this game? Chances are, whatever it was, is probably my number 11. But anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Always looking for feedback, and I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good day. Bye-bye.